Is it true that Rodney Hinton Jr. took matters into his own hands after his son was unalive by the police? I'm sure that by now everybody has heard of Rodney Hinton Jr. And if you haven't heard, he's the individual, a father, whose son was unalive by the police 2 days prior to him getting in his vehicle and plowing down a retired officer, deputy, sheriff, or whatever. And you've seen the footage of him going to court, being arraigned. They were talking about his bond, whether he was eligible for bond, which they denied for 72 hours. And they had all these police in the courtroom, which I don't think was professional because, let's be honest, they did that for intimidation because one of their own fellow officers were fallen or taken by this individual. I'm going to play the devil's advocate and trying to balance the scales as much as possible when giving my input on this matter. Okay, now, from a father's perspective, especially a black father's perspective, when we've seen many times over law enforcement take one of us, or especially take one of our children away from us, you don't know the hurt, the emptiness, the rage, the outrage, and everybody's like, turn the other cheek. Forgive. No. We're tired of marching. We're tired of forgiving. We're tired of being understanding when it comes to especially our children being taken away from us by those that are supposed to be held at a higher standard and can de-escalate or talk down any other individuals who don't look like us. And we know they have the means to do it, but they choose not to. Again, they choose not to. They're very selective in how they handle certain individuals when it comes to certain circumstances. You can have a person that's combative who is white, threatening them, have a weapon, and they're talking them down, trying to calm them down. And they're not in fear for their lives. But when it comes to a person looking like us, they immediately go to be judge, jury, and executioner. They have that Judge Dredd mentality. And that's the comparison that black people are seeing. You can handle situations like this in this manner, but when it comes to us, you immediately go to want to take one of us out, especially when it comes to our children. Now, I've never seen videos of any black officers taking out any of a parent who was white, their children. I've never seen an unaliving of a white child by the hands of a black officer. But I've seen many videos of white officers unaliving black children. You can have a badass white individual who's either on drugs, doing things that they're not supposed to, stealing, robbing, or mugging, and you don't see a black officer interacting with these white kids, taking them out. If you ever do see a video, it's a white officer taking a white child out or a white individual out who's acting erratic or irrational, and it's almost the last resort that they go to before using lethal force. Okay. But when it comes to us, it's instantaneously. It's automatic. There's no negotiation. There's no, let's see what's going on. There's no talking down. And 9 times out of 10, it's always a person fleeing from the officer, not engaging with the officer. That's where it becomes problematic. What has become blatantly obvious is that civilians are held at a higher standard than law enforcement. Law enforcement should be at a professional level held at a higher standard. They have gone through training in which we haven't. But we're expected to know how to conduct ourselves whenever we're confronted by law enforcement, which is a bunch of bullshit. Okay? as I made the comparison before between how they interact with white people in comparison to us, I'll take it a step further. Being the antagonist, okay? They know who they can and can't fuck with in certain ways. If I was a person who come from money and was rich, okay, and my children were well-to-do, but children are going to be who they are, okay? They're going to find ways to get into some trouble, some mischief, okay? But say I'm well-known. Do you think if my kid was out there doing something that they shouldn't be doing, that immediately they would be confronted and treated in such a manner in which their life would be in danger or snuffed out? No, it wouldn't. Because I'm a person with money. I come from a high society. Versus a child coming from a poor and impoverished setting, our life is of less value. And speaking of the value of life, here's my question. Why is it that whenever an officer is unalive, it's a big deal? But whenever a regular citizen, and I'm going to just say it now, just to be transparent, regardless of what ethnic background or what race you are, if a cop takes your life in the line of duty, your life is meaningless in comparison to them. Why are we conditioned to think or believe that? Is my question. And it's always a process with their qualified immunity, the state's attorney, the internal affairs, everybody that seems to be on their side whenever they are negligent in how they handle the public. Now, in regards to Rodney's son, he didn't make the right choice by engaging or hanging around said people. Because, the first thing they're going to say is guilty by association, which is the same philosophy that people have when it comes to officers. When they say, oh, there's only a few bad apples, guilty by association. Same concept. You can't be selective in what's acceptable versus what isn't. I'm going to say this and I'm going to say this. I'm not saying that what Rodney did was right. I'm going to just say it like that. But I understand where he was coming from. The man that he had taken out didn't have anything to do with what happened to his son. In my belief, he should have targeted those who were responsible for his son. And this is the one thing that I'm saying, like in that movie, American Skin, which is almost relatable in comparison. And if you don't know, look it up and then watch the movie and then come back and get back at me with your comments. But I'm going to say this. Be lucky that this man wasn't of a military background. I don't know. But let's just say he was. And if he wanted to, a true eye for an eye, which people ain't thinking about, which hasn't been brought up. If you took my child, I'm going to take yours in return and have you living like I am living with that grief of a lost loved one. Something to think about while people are up in their self-righteousness.